Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're featuring the Pokemon Stadium 2 tier list with all of the rental Pokemon. Let's go ahead and jump right in. First off on the tier list, it's going to be Venusaur, and we're going to go in numerical order, meaning we're going to go from the first few Pokemon all the way down to the end, which would be Tyranitar. So Venusaur is a solid grass poison type. It does have some pretty interesting win conditions where it can poison stall a Pokemon out by also recovering with Giga Drain. But the other moves really do leave a lot to be desired here. Tackle and Growl are not the greatest moves. Giga Drain and Poison Powder are a really nice combination. I just wish we had better moves on Venusaur, and I feel like that's going to be the case for a lot of Pokemon here. These rental Pokemon do not have the best moves. So that is going to put Venusaur in the B tier for me. It's a solid option. Waters are some of the best types in the game, and it actually deals with them pretty well. So that alone, typing is enough to put it in the B tier, but the move pool leaves a lot to be desired. Next up on the tier list, it's Game Freak's favorite child. It is Charizard. Charizard is a solid mixed attacker with Fire Punch and Wing Attack. You do also have some pretty interesting speed control with Scary Face here, and you also have damage mitigation with Growl. It can also stack up to 6 times, right? And Scary Face sharply lowers speed, so you can also just drop speed on something and then switch in with something slower and then finish it off with a better type matchup, right? So, for example, Charizard does get walled by a few rock types, some electric types, right? So if you can get away with getting a Scary Face and then switching to a better type Pokemon that can deal with that Pokemon better, you will have a better time. Charizard is going to go into the A tier for me. It just deals with so many Pokemon so well. Both its attack and special attack are really, really good. So Charizard in the A tier. Next up on the tier list, we have Blastoise. And Blastoise is a solid water type here with Hydro Pump, Mud Slap, Rapid Spin, and Withdraw. Again, the move pool is atrocious. Hydro Pump can miss. It's a really strong water type attack, 120 base power, right? You also have Mud Slap as your other damaging option and Rapid Spin. Rapid Spin does not have the buff generation Rapid Spin where it increases your speed on top of removing entry hazards, which are also not a thing here. So we shouldn't really talk about that, but Mud Slap might as well not be a move because it does 20 damage base power. It can lower accuracy and create some like cheese situations where you could win off of just lowering the accuracy so much that they just can't hit you. But Blastoise is a solid water type, but there's just better options like Starmie, Slowbro, Vaporeon, and so on and so forth. So Blastoise is going to be in the B tier for me. Unfortunately, like I said, there's just way better water types in the game, and that do what Blastoise wants to do, but better. Next up on the tier list, we've got Butterfree, and Butterfree did get some sort of buff if you played Pokemon Stadium 1. It now has access to Hyper Beam, which is a pretty solid physical attack. It is going to put you in the recharge state right after using it, so you got to be careful when using it, but it can secure a KO in a pinch. You also have Gust, Psychic, and then Stun Spore for speed control. So it does got some pretty decent options, right? It can hit with its pretty decent special attack stat, which is 229. And you can also speed control with Stun Spore a little bit, and then Hyper Beam for those key knockouts, which its attack is not the best, but you could hit things that are physically weak, like Chansey, for example, with Hyper Beam. So it does offer some value in that. All right, and Butterfree is going to go into the C tier. All right. Next up on the tier list, we have Beedrill here, and Beedrill, if you played the first Pokemon Stadium with the rental Pokemon, it got a big buff. It now has access to Sludge Bomb, which you can, pair up with Focus Energy and do lots of damage, and it's also Stab, right? And now you have Twin Needle, and then you also have Pursuit. I think Beedrill is a solid Pokemon because it's fast and it hits Psychic types, which are really strong in this game. And with Twin Needle, you can actually just deal so much damage to physically frail Pokemon. If you can get maybe like a Stun Spore or something on an Alakazam, you can just execute it with Twin Needles. Unironically, I don't know if people are going to get mad at me for this, but I think Beedrill is an S tier. I guess I could put it high A tier, but I think it's just really, really good. I'm a Beedrill believer. It's everyone's favorite flying type Pokemon from Gen 1. It is going to be Pidgeot, and Pidgeot is pretty solid. It did get also a buff in this generation with access to Steel Wing. It can now hit those rock types that used to wall it before. You also have Whirlwind. If a matchup is unfavorable, you can actually get rid of stuff that are on the field, or if they start setting up lots of boosts. So it's actually very interesting as an answer to Pokemon that maybe want to spam, minimize, or double team and create a situation where it's hard to hit opposing Pokemon or boosts get out of control. Whirlwind is a fantastic answer. Swift is a solid answer as well. It's funny that I mentioned the Whirlwind to get rid of double team and stuff like that, but it is highly accurate, right? It will not miss. And then Fly is unfortunately not the best of flying type moves, but in this generation there's not that many, right? I believe Drill Peck would be the best flying type move, which only Fearow gets access to, so Pidgeot is going to go into the C tier with Butterfree. Next up on the list, we've got Raticate. Raticate has some pretty interesting options. With access to Pursuit, it can no longer get walled by ghost types. You have Hyper Fang with that 1 in 10 chance to flinch, and Super Fang to cut HP in half. Super helpful for breaking through walls, and then Scary Face as a solid speed control option. That alone is going to put Raticate into the B tier. Solid normal type. There are a few better normal Pokemon though. Stay tuned for those. I still believe Fearow is one of the better flying types in the game with access to something like Drill Peck. Toxic for those pesky, bulky Pokemon that you can't really one-hit KO. And you have access to Pursuit. Apparently every other Pokemon gets Pursuit. It's a solid option, but again, it's for special attackers mostly. So it's not the greatest special attacker. So that Pursuit will punish switches and can also hit ghost types. So that's pretty interesting. And then Hyper Beam on Stab normal is insane. So you can really blow stuff up with Hyper Beam and Drill Peck. Just a lot of damage potential with Fearow. One of my favorite flying types. This is an easy A tier for me for Fearow. That's not the A tier. There we go. Next up on the list, we've got Jesse's favorite Pokemon, Arbok. And Arbok has access to Sludge Bomb now. It didn't used to have that. It had Acid, I believe, in the first game. And now Bite also to hit ghost types, which is a really big thing here. You have Glare for paralysis. Unfortunately, it's not the most accurate move. It's 75 accuracy. And then you also have Dig. Unfortunately, you do go underground, and you can take double damage from Earthquake, so you got to be careful with that. And it is a 2-turn move, so people can... so the opponents can easily switch in and out of that. So it's not the best. There are better poison types with also ground moves. A little bit of a spoiler, but Arbok's going to go into the C tier. Next up, we've got the mascot here, Pikachu here. It's got some interesting moves here. A little bit of a mixed attacker for some reason. They just can't commit to having Pikachu as a full-on special attacker. You have Thunderbolt as your reliable electric damage. You have Thunder Wave, which can paralyze. I believe you can also paralyze ground types and electric types in this game. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, though. So you do have some interesting synergy here with Thunder Wave and Headbutt, where you can flinch, as it was used to be known. And then you also have Iron Tail for hitting Pokemon that are weak to steel, right? Like rock types, etc. Unfortunately, Pikachu's stats are not good enough, and unfortunately its move pool isn't also good enough. So we're going to put it in the D tier. Next up, we have Sandslash. And if you saw my first Pokemon Stadium tier list video, one of my biggest complaints was that Sandslash didn't actually have Earthquake. It had Dig. And now with access to Earthquake, it is definitely going to bump it up a tier. With access to Sandstorm, unfortunately there's no abilities, right? You could do some really cool stuff with Sandstorm, but you have Sand Attack to, again, create some niche scenarios where they can't hit you, and you can win off of that alone. And then, unfortunately, the last damaging option is going to be Fury Swipes, which is not the greatest, right? You can do 36 to like 54 damage, depending on how many hits you get, or a little bit more potentially, right? But Earthquake, in my opinion, just having that is so strong for Sandslash. Sandslash was on the C tier before. That is going to bump it up to B tier just because it has Earthquake now. Next up, we got Nidoqueen here, and this is a Pokemon that you could argue got a little bit worse. It lost access to Earthquake. It has access to Mud Slap and Ice Punch now. Nidoqueen does have decent special attack, right? So it is a solid mixed attacker. You also have Body Slam, which is, you know, a little bit more damage than Mud Slap, if you had to ask me. Mud Slap, of course, with the 20 base power is just really unfortunate that if this thing had Earthquake and Ice Punch, it just would be unstoppable. But Toxic is really nice for, you know, getting poison onto really bulky Pokemon that you really can't break through. And then Body Slam, you also have the option to paralyze the enemy. So Ice Punch can freeze 1 in 10. And it's really good for hitting flying types that want to switch in on any of its ground moves. Not that they do a lot of damage. Nidoqueen was in the A tier before, but I think it's arguable that it's in the B tier or even in the C tier if you had to ask me. I'm going to be modest and put it in the B tier though. Next up, we've got the partner for Nidoqueen, Nidoking. Nidoking also has Mudslap now as its ground move. It's really, really unfortunate. I don't know why they do this. Maybe they realize how strong these mixed attackers are, and if they had solid coverage with also like their physical ground moves, stab, it just would be too powerful, I think, and you'd just be able to breeze through the game so quickly. So I think they're intentionally like nerfing these really good Pokemon with bad movesets to really like balance it out, which I think is really interesting. So you have access to Thunder to hit bulky water types. And then you have Horndrill as a one-hit KO option. It does miss a lot, so it's not very reliable. And then Horn Attack as your reliable, solid damage output with 65 base power. It doesn't flinch, it doesn't do anything besides damage. And then, again, Thunder and Mudslap as your other options. Nidoking is going to go into the C tier. It unfortunately is going to drop from my previous tier list. Next up on the list, we've got the Fairy Pokemon that is not a Fairy type in this game. Rather normal, Clefable. Clefable has some solid damage output with Headbutt, can flinch slower Pokemon, and then you have Ice Punch, which is incredible into grass types, and one of the better Pokemon in the game, Dragonite. It's just super effective on it, and it can just one-shot it. So I think having an answer to dragon types in Clefable, unironically, without it being a fairy type, is so cool. I think Clefable is a solid A tier just because it's a solid answer into dragon Pokemon, which there's only one, I believe, fully evolved. You could also say it's a B tier with Metronome, kind of risky move to be using. I'm gonna say high B tier, but I think low A tier is also acceptable. Next up on the list, we've got Ninetales, and Ninetales is a decent fire type with decent speed as well. Its coverage is Fire Blast, which can miss, high damage output though. And then you also have Quick Attack as your secondary option to snipe low HP enemies. Roar can be very niche and for like getting rid of Pokemon that are boosting. And then Safeguard could also help its partners be protected from status. So Ninetales is going to go into the C tier. There are better fire types, as you can see, Charizard and a couple others down the list. Next is Wigglytuff, another normal type, which is pretty specially tanky. This Pokemon has access to Fire Punch, which is a pretty reliable fire type attack. Special attack is actually pretty decent at 212. And then you have Disable, which is fairly inaccurate, 55 accuracy. And also Sing, which is also fairly inaccurate, but hitting these moves can be game-changing, and you have solid damage output in Double Edge. I think Clefable is a very niche Pokemon that could be a solid answer into some steel types like Skarmory, so I think that alone is enough to put it into the low B tier. Next up, we've got Vileplume, and it has access to one of the best grass-type moves in the game, Petal Dance. You can also pair this with one of the berry items, Bitterberry, to self-cure yourself from confusion. So that's an interesting buff for Vileplume. You also have Poison Powder, just to poison stall certain things, and then Acid for lowering defense. This comes out of your physical attack, right? So you got to keep that in mind. Vileplume being a special attacker definitely wants to be using Petal Dance. Sweet Scent also can lower the accuracy and make some of your lower accurate moves hit more often, such as Fire Blast, etc. That's going to put Vileplume into the low B tier. It's also up there with Venusaur. Next on the list is Parasect, and Parasect has one of the best moves in the game available to it, Spore. However, it has a little bit of a problem in the typing department. Being Bug and Grass means that you die to Peck or Wing Attack, while also not having the best stats, right? You do have Giga Drain, which really can actually heal you a lot. But I think Parasect is a Pokemon that you bring in the back and switch into certain matchups that you can resist and put stuff to sleep and then recover with Giga Drain. So into certain water types, it would be really good. Parasect, unfortunately, is going to go into the C tier. Its typing is just such a problem that it's just hard to get around. Next, we have Venomoth here, and Venomoth lost access to Sleep Powder. Unfortunately, the moves that it has is Leech Life and Sludge Bomb for stab. Leech Life is unfortunately the unbuffed version, which is 20 base power. It's so bad. Sludge Bomb is incredible, but I believe Venomoth is more of a special attacker, as you can see from its stats. So it definitely takes advantage of that Psychic move. So it could be very good into some poison types like Venusaur, right? It can completely wall them and do solid damage output to them. And then Vorsight also makes it so that you can hit ghost types with physical attacks, which is a little weird. Sludge Bomb also being able to poison, and it's a solid damaging move, but yeah, losing Sleep Powder is just way too important. Venomoth is going to go into the C tier. Next on the tier list, we've got Dugtrio here. And Dugtrio, unfortunately, does not have Earthquake. It has Magnitude, which is a varying in power move, so it's a little bit of RNG. You have Slash, which can critically hit Attract for some reason. It is a female Dugtrio, so you can keep that in mind. And then Curse for some reason. It increases your attack and defense and lowers your speed. So I guess you could really set up a couple of curses and then start slashing in Magnitude just to kind of do a lot of damage. I guess in certain matchups you could really run away with some wins if you have the type advantage, right? But unfortunately no arena trap to trap things and set up on them like in future games. But Dugtrio definitely got worse. It's going to go down into the D tier. Persian has access to Headbutt and Bite for hitting ghost types, so it really doesn't get walled, so that's really nice. It does get walled by like rock types and steel types, right? So, I mean, I guess you can kind of make a case for it actually being walled. It has access to Growl to lower attacks, and then Roar to switch out bad matchups, but it's just a really fast Pokemon that can Headbutt flinch at best. I believe I had Persian in the B tier before, but it's definitely taking a hit. Losing access to Hyper Beam is huge. Next up on the list, we've got Golduck, and Golduck is a Pokemon that lost coverage. It used to have Bubble Beam and Ice Beam, so you were able to actually hit a lot of stuff with Bubble Beam and Ice Beam and also Confusion. But now you have Fury Swipes and Psych Up, which Psych Up is really cool if they do set up on you. You can kind of copy those boosts and then run away with a win. But yeah, just Golduck definitely got a lot worse. Golduck was in the A tier before, but if I had to revise it, I think Golduck would be in the B tier. And with this moveset, it's definitely like in the C tier or D tier. I'm actually going to put it in D. There's just way better water types, right? Next up on the list, we've got Primeape. Primeape has one of the best fighting type moves in Cross Chop, can critically hit, and is fairly accurate at 80. I think the move coverage could be a little bit better, but you do have Thrash. You can also equip one of the confusion breaking berries. I believe it's Bitter Berry. And you can also set up with Curse, right? Boosting your attack and defense. It's kind of like a bulk up per se, but you're lowering your speed. Focus Energy and Cross Chop, in my opinion, is a pretty scary combination, especially in this gen. I put Primeape in the A tier before, and I think there's a case for it to be made that it stays in low A tier, especially with Focus Energy Cross Chop. It's just so much raw damage. Next up, the legendary Pokemon Arcanine. Arcanine is a really cool Pokemon that has access to Extreme Speed. I believe it is the only Pokemon that has access to this move in this game. Flame Wheel, while not the hardest hitting, it is very consistent. It's 100% accuracy. You have 1 in 10 chance of burning, and then you also have Leer for lowering defenses, so you can do stuff like Leer and then snipe KOs with Extreme Speed, or you can roar bad matchups away and then just Flame Wheel for stab. I think Arcanine is going to go into the B tier. It's not as good as Charizard, I think. The coverage is definitely not there, but you do have some niches with Extreme Speed. Okay, I wasn't going to do Poliwhirl, but I just thought this was really funny. It has access to Belly Drum and then Surf and Snore as its damaging options, and I just want to ask whoever made this moveset, like, what were you smoking? Because I guess you could do some really cool stuff with like Belly Drum, and then you can rest and then start cranking these super overpowered snores, but I don't know, it's just really funny to me. It has potential actually to kind of sweep if you can get it off, but yeah, it's really unlikely. You could also use one of the berry items, I believe. It's solid recovery, it's not Citrus Berry, right? I don't know, man. I think Poliwhirl, Belly Drum, Snore, S tier, easy. Next up on the list, we've got Poliwrath, and Poliwrath is really interesting because it has access to Mind Reader to make sure its moves never miss, and then you can use Dynamic Punch to do a lot of damage and confuse the enemy, or you can just make sure that your really strong Hydro Pump doesn't miss. Last move is going to be double slap, so you can kind of ignore that. It's not a really good coverage option, so you're basically stuck with 3 moves, but it's a solid mixed attacker. Poliwrath is literally Urshifu at home. Rapid Strike, right? I'm going to put it in the B tier just because of its niche of Mind Reader Dynamic Punch, and like being able to hit your Hydro Pumps is really, really nice. Of course, it does take a whole turn to charge up, but the option to like have that is really, really nice. Next up, we've got Alakazam here. It's got some interesting moves in Thief. Thief is a dark type move, which means it's a special attack. So it can really just, you know, steal items and do solid damage to opposing ghosts that used to give it a lot of trouble. I mean, not really, because Psychic and the only ghost Pokemon, I guess it's really good into Misdreavus, which is the other ghost type that they added. But yeah, Psybeam actually dealt really well with Gengar, right? So it wasn't really a problem. You also have Future Sight, which can, you know, set up a KO in 2 to 3 turns. I believe 2 turns, actually. Kinesis is a really weird move that is basically double team, but you have to hit it. So it's an 80% accurate double team. It's just really bizarre. The moveset leaves a lot to be desired. Alakazam is going to go into the B tier. Next up on the list, we've got the 4-armed fighting type Pokemon, Machamp. Machamp has the fighting type elemental punches into a physical attacker. They did it again. They gave Fire Punch and Thunder Punch for move coverage, but its special attack is not the best. If you can hit something for ×4, then maybe. I don't think there's any Pokemon that are ×4 to fire. Submission as your semi-accurate move, and then Scary Face for speed control. And then really weird move coverage on a physical attacker. You have special moves. It's just really bizarre. Machamp is going to go into the C tier. It's just really, really bad. The moves leave a lot to be desired. Next on the list, we've got Victreebel. Victreebel is interesting because it has access to Sleep Powder this time and Solar Beam. So what you can do is you can set up, by putting something to sleep, you can also set up Growth a couple times and then fire a powerful Solar Beam. Growth, worth mentioning, increases special attack, not attack and special attack like it does in the new games. And then Acid lowers physical defense. Having access to Sleep Powder definitely just bumps it up a tier and puts Victreebel into the A tier. It's definitely a better Venusaur in my opinion. Next up on the list, we've got Tentacruel, the water poison type. Tentacruel has some pretty solid damage output in Bubble Beam. Fairly accurate move, 100% accurate, can lower speed. You also have Sludge Bomb, which is fantastic stab. Solid mixed attacker here. The stats aren't too bad, and then you also have Barrier to create some win conditions where they can't KO you if you get enough of those off. Tentacruel is going to go into the B tier, higher than Blastoise, I think. Just the move coverage as a mixed attacker and having access to speed control in your water move, and also not being able to miss like Hydro Pump does, is just fantastic. So B tier for Tentacruel. Next up is Golem. Golem is also a victim of bad movesets. It has Magnitude as its stab ground move, which has varying damage. Rock Throw, it doesn't even have Rock Slide. So no added effects besides the damage, and it's not even 100% accurate. You have Rock Smash, which can be used to shatter rocks to open new paths. Not that that does anything in game. And then Harden for some reason. You still get blown up by water types, grass types. It's just a really bad Pokemon. Listen, I'm a Golem hater. It's just one of the worst Pokemon in the game. It has the most atrocious movesets. I'd say the typing is horrendous. You're just dead to Razor Leaf and Water Gun. So I'd say it's an E tier for me. It's really close to being like F tier or G tier, but I'm just going to meme it up and put it in G tier. Next up on the list, we've got Rapidash. Rapidash has Fire Spin as its damaging option. You can do some really interesting things with Toxic and Fire Spin just to trap them, and that damage can add up pretty quickly. Stomp can also flinch, so you've got some really like disruptive moves with Fire Spin, Toxic, and Stomp and Attract. It's just good luck moving, but it's too gimmicky for my taste. Rapidash is definitely worse than Ninetales, so I'm going to put it in the D tier. Next up on the list, it's one of the better water types in the game. You've got Slowbro. Slowbro has access to the best water type move in Surf. It also has access to solid psychic damage in Confusion, so it doesn't get walled by stuff like grass poisons like Venusaur or Victreebel. And then the last moves are fairly disruptive. You can disable certain moves if you can switch into something that Slowbro can tank with its really high physical defense. And then Growl can lower the attack of the opposing Pokemon too. So super solid typing, good damage output, good stats. Slowbro is actually going to be our first unironic S tier. I know Belly Drum, Snore, Poliwhirl is more of a meme, but it's actually our first S tier. Next up, we've got Magneton. Magneton gained the Steel typing in this game, with Steel types now existing in the game. So it's no longer a mono electric type, which means now it's ×4 weak to ground, and now it's weak to fire and a bunch of other types. So Magneton definitely took a hit here, with also not the best moveset. You've got Swift and Thunder as your damaging options, and then you have Disruption with Thunder Wave and Flash. Thunder Wave is 100% accurate, so you could definitely do something with that. And then Flash can lower accuracy and just be really annoying. But in my opinion, Magneton lost so much by gaining the Steel typing, especially it actually dies to Mud Slap now, so I think that's just really funny. It is better than these, so I guess, like, is it really though? No. It's gonna be D tier. Why is there no good electric types, man? Maybe Zapdos and Raikou can save the electric typing. Next up on the list, we've got Surfetch'd, pre-evolution, Farfetch'd. You do have access to Swords Dance and Slash for crazy damage. You also have decent move coverage with Steel Wing, so you don't get walled by rock types, and then Fly as your stab flying option. So Wing Attack, in my opinion, would have been really, really crazy to use, but it is what it is, as they say. It's a solid normal type. I'm going to put Farfetch'd into the B tier. Next up is one of the most OP Pokemon in Pokemon Unite, Dodrio. Dodrio has pretty good move coverage with Tri-Attack. It's 100% accurate, so those moves are very rare and very good to have. Fly as your flying coverage. It's unfortunately not Wing Attack, or I don't think it even gets Wing Attack. It doesn't have wings. So maybe Drill Peck would be crazy on Dodrio, but you also have Growl and Pursuit. Pursuit for hitting Psychic types and Ghost types, but I think you just want to hit them with Stab normal. Dodrio is going to go into the B tier. Next on the list, we've got Dewgong, and Dewgong's got really good move coverage with Waterfall and Aurora Beam. It's worth mentioning that Waterfall does not flinch in this game, and Aurora Beam can drop the opposing Pokemon's attack 1 in 10 chance, right? 1 in 10 chance, right? And then you also have the nice combination of Rest and Sleep Talk, so it actually has 4 decent moves. It's not a bad Pokemon. I think having access to solid recovery with Rest and being able to use Sleep Talk, or potentially even being able to switch into like a Sleep Powder or a Spore, and then just Sleep Talking is good enough to put it into the A tier. It's pretty solid, actually. The typing's not the best, but the move set, I think, makes up for it. Next up, we've got Muck, and the move sets leave a little bit to be desired. Dynamic Punch is fairly inaccurate, highly inaccurate, actually. Sludge could be Sludge Bomb here. I don't know why they went for Sludge. Acid Armor sharply raises defense, and then you can do some interesting stuff with Disable and Acid Armor into certain matchups. I think Muck is also going to go into the C tier with its fellow poison types. There's not very good poison types far like the ones that have the grass typing. Next on the list, we've got Cloyster, and unfortunately Cloyster does not have really good moves. Unfortunately, Clamp is a really, really bad move. You also have Aurora Beam, which can lower attack, and then you can create situations where it's high defense while lowering the opposing Pokemon's attack, can make it so that you're not being able to be KO'd by physical attackers, but that's really, really niche. And then you can also further increase your defense with Withdraw. So it could be a physical wall into like the right matchups, and it could win you a game because of it, but I don't know. It's just, I'm not a fan of Clamp, and I'm not a fan of Spike Cannon. Cloyster is going to go down into the C tier. Next up on the list, we've got everybody's favorite Ghost-type Pokemon, Gengar. Gengar, unfortunately, is also screwed over by its move selection. It has Hypnosis and Nightmare, which I guess you could... Bro wants to be Darkrai so bad. You also have Nightshade and then Thief. So you have a really interesting, to say the least, moveset. Unfortunately, for the few ghost types that are in the game, Gengar is not one of the better ones. I'm going to say solid C tier. Next up on the list, we've got Onix, and Onix's moveset doesn't look too bad, right? You've got Solid Stab and Earthquake and Rock Throw, Sandstorm for damage over time, and then you also have Strength. I don't see a situation where you would want to use Strength over Earthquake or Rock Throw, since you do have fairly good coverage, but maybe there's certain matchups where something's resisted by ground or immune, maybe like a flying type. But then Rock Throw does super effective damage. I don't know. Let me know in the comment section what strength it would have here. Onix is a Pokemon that has really good defense, but the typing, again, Rock and Ground is awful. You die to Water Gun and Razor Leaf, so I think it could actually go down with... It has Earthquake, though, so it's not as bad as Golem. I'm going to say D tier. All right, next we've got Hypno, and Hypno is another Psychic type in the game. There's just better Psychic types, in my opinion. Confusion, and you have the combination of Hypnosis and Dream Eater. You can also psych up stat boost from the opponent. Hypno is going to go into the C tier. It's definitely not better than Alakazam. Alakazam just has better stats. Next up on the list, we've got Kingler, and Kingler has unfortunately really bad moves. Crabhammer is a water type move that can critically hit. And then the rest of your moves are Leer and Vice Grip, which is the only combination that you can use since Crabhammer is a special attack. And actually Kingler's special attack is not the best, so I think actually Kingler's really, really bad. Especially because it has like a one-hit KO move that can only hit due to its 30% accuracy. So Kingler's one of the worst water types in the game. I'm going to say solid D tier for that. Up next, we've got Electrode, and Electrode is one of the fastest Pokemon in the game. You also have access to Thunder, which is a fairly inaccurate electric type move. You also have Swift, which can never miss, and then Sonic Boom, which does a set amount of damage. I believe it's 20. Then you can also do things with like Flash. Unfortunately, the moveset is just really bad. You just get walled by ground and rock types. The trend of bad electric types continues in Pokemon Stadium 2. Electrode is going to be... Is it worse than Pikachu and Magneton? I think it's still equally as bad, so it's going to be D tier for me. Next up on the list, we've got Exeggutor, the grass psychic type, and Wolfie's favorite Pokemon, apparently. Exeggutor has access to Sleep Powder and Nightmare, which is a really cool combination. I mean, you don't have to hit Hypnosis, right? It's fairly more accurate. It's still a bad combination. I don't know why they're so... I think Nightmare just got introduced in this gen, and so they really wanted to put it on everything that they could. You have solid damage output with Confusion, but you have no grass moves. So you have Egg Bomb, which Exeggutor is a special attacker, so it's just not the best. Exeggutor is going to go into the C tier for me. Next up on the list, we've got Marowak, and Marowak has some pretty bad moves again. Bone Rush is one of the not so good ground type attacks, aka not Earthquake. You also have Focus Energy and Thrash if you wanted to do that, and you could pop in the Bitterberry to break that confusion, so that's something nice that you can do. Marowak's attack is pretty solid, but it still doesn't have that combination of the Bone Club to double its attack, right? So, unfortunately, it also has access to Thunder Punch, which has an abysmal special attack here for Marowak. Marowak's going into the C tier for me. Next up is the kicking Pokemon, Hitmonlee. Hitmonlee has access to High Jump Kick, which is not the buffed version that we've seen in later games, which 120 base power. It also has Reversal. This is really good. If you can somehow get to low HP, it will do crazy damage, especially if you can set up a few Meditates, but it's too risky, and Mega Kick also misses a lot. So missing High Jump Kick can also cost you a lot, and it's just really, really risky as a Pokemon to use. I'm going to put Hitmonlee into the C tier. Next up on the list, we've got Hitmonchan, and Hitmonchan's got some interesting options here. You do have counter with some pretty solid defenses, right? So you can actually get a counter off. And then if you fail to get a KO, you can actually clean up with Mach Punch as a priority move. You also have Ice Punch. While Hitmonchan doesn't have the best special attack, it can do a lot of damage to a certain Pokemon, and that is Dragonite. Strength is also a solid damage option for anything that Mach Punch doesn't hit. I'm not sure what that would be for, but regardless, it's 100% accurate and it's 80 base damage, so it's not the worst. I think Hitmonchan's actually a really solid Pokemon with access to ice moves, so B tier for me. Alright, next we've got Lickitung. Lickitung has some solid move coverage with Hyper Beam and Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is able to hit a lot of psychic types for super effective damage, and then Surf is a solid damage option here with decent special attack, actually higher than its physical attack, right? Supersonic, you can actually ignore that. It's actually a really bad move. Lickitung's gonna go into the B tier. Wheezing is super interesting here because it has access to self-destruct. This is 200 base power while also KOing yourself. And then you have decent coverage with Sludge, and then Zap Cannon's just a really bad move that just misses a lot. But I think if you're ahead and have some KOs, you can afford to try to get a Zap Cannon off. Haze is super interesting for getting rid of stat boosts. I think self-destruct is so important for getting rid of certain Pokemon that might just give you trouble. And Weezing has solid attack, so I'm going to say actually B tier. If it didn't have self-destruct, it's definitely way worse, but just being able to blow up and take something down with you is just incredible. Man, I hate it. Why are they giving it Zap Cannon? It also doesn't have Earthquake. Next, we have Rhydon. Rhydon is one of my favorite Pokemon, and I'm just disappointed. It has speed control as a really slow ground rock type that's weak to water and grass, the most common types in early gens. You have Dig, which makes you go underground, and then you take super effective, double damage from Earthquake. Stomp as your other move. You don't even have any rock moves. Zap Cannon just misses a lot. This is really disappointing. Rhydon, unfortunately, could have been really good, but it is going to be D tier. It's not as bad as Golem, though. Just stay there, Golem. Next is Tangela. Tangela has the combination of Growth and Giga Drain. While when you do use Growth, you're also boosting the damage from Thief, and you also have Sleep Powder, so it's actually not a bad Pokemon. The moves are actually pretty solid. The move pool is really good, though. I think it's low B tier. It's not better than Venu or than Victory Bell. Next up on the list, we've got Kangaskhan. Kangaskhan's got decent move coverage here. With Dizzy Punch, it has 1 in 5 chance to confuse, and it's 100% accurate, which is a really good thing in this game. There's a lot of moves that miss a lot. Leer can lower defense, so you can really set up KOs with Dizzy Punch. And then you also have Surf and Bite as your coverage options. While its special attack isn't the best, it could really just pick up KOs on those really bad ground rock types like Golem, like Onyx, or Rhydon. I think Kangaskhan's a solid A tier, maybe high B tier. I would say it's not breaking through yet. Seadra is the next Pokemon, and it's got pretty good move coverage with Surf and Dragon Breath. Both of these are special attacks, and it's also one of the other water types that actually gets dragon type moves. I completely forgot about Kingdra, actually. That's in the game now. The other moves are Smokescreen to lower accuracy, and then Swift, so these aren't the best, but I think you're mostly clicking Surf and Dragon Breath in these situations. It's got solid special attack and can really hit Dragonite pretty hard, and it can also hit Kingdra, which not a lot of Pokemon can actually do for super effective damage. Seadra is going to be A tier for me. Being able to hit a water dragon type with a dragon move is actually really, really good. Next up on the list, we've got Seeking. Seeking's got Waterfall, Flail, Horn Drill, and Supersonic. Flail is a really bad move that should not be on a Pokemon. Waterfall is solid, but Seeking's best stat is going to be its attack. It also has, unfortunately, Supersonic and Horn Drill, so it's got basically 2 moves to use. It's just really, really bad. Seeking's going to be into the D tier. It's one of the worser water types with Kingler. Next up on the list is what I would think is the best water type in the game. Unfortunately, I think they realized how strong it was, and they gave it really bad moves. You've got Starmie here with move sinks in Harden and Rapid Spin. Those really don't do anything for it. Waterfall could be Surf, and it could just do so much damage. It also has Zap Cannon, which is a move that misses a lot. I feel like they just really wanted to nerf Starmie in this iteration of the rental Pokemon. Starmie would have been an S tier for me, but it just feels like a low A tier for me. We have an interesting support Pokemon in Mr. Mime now. Mr. Mime has access to Substitute Baton Pass, which is really interesting. You could pass a sub, and you can also pass barrier boosts onto a Pokemon of your choosing. You also have Psybeam as a reliable damage option, so it's a really interesting supporting Pokemon that you could have in the back, or you could lead with and then pivot into something that is more offensive and a better matchup into what you're facing. Mr. Mime for me is going to be a solid B tier. I would say middle B tier. Next up is Scyther. Scyther's got an interesting moveset, nothing that actually really misses. So it's a really good Pokemon that will just dish out consistent damage, and it's really fast. Wing attack is solid stab. You have Swift that never misses, and then Focus Energy And basically, what you want to do with this Pokemon is focus energy and pray that you crit with one of your moves. Pursuit is also really good for like trapping and switching into something, right? Scyther is going to go into high B tier for me. This Pokemon is really good. Next up is Jynx. Jynx can actually trap Pokemon with Mean Look. It can Ice Punch and Confusion for solid stab damage. None of these moves miss. Lick can also paralyze and just deal solid damage. This is really a no-brainer. Jynx is the second S tier Pokemon. Next up on the tier list is Electabuzz. Electabuzz also has really accurate moves, which is a really good thing. You also have Light Screen as a really good support option, and Leer if you want to set up KOs in the back if you have a physical attacker. Swift, while not the best move, it's also not the worst. Electabuzz does have pretty decent attack stat. We finally have a good electric type in Electabuzz. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the A tier. Coming up next is Magmar. Magmar's got Fire Punch with a fire move that really doesn't miss, which is really, really nice. You've got a poison type move in Smog as a 50-50 chance of poisoning, which is really, really high. I don't remember this being like this in the newer games, so correct me if I'm wrong. But you also have Confuse Ray, so the combination of Confuse Ray and Smog can really just snowball out of control with the opponent being unable to hit you and taking poison damage over time, and then you can also set up smoke screens. So it's a fairly disruptive set with solid damage output and Fire Punch. Is it as good as Charizard with the move coverage? I don't think so, but it's a solid fire type that's up there with Arcanine, but not as good. I would say middle to low B tier. Next up on the list is one of the other bug type Pokemon in the game. It is Pinsir. Pinsir's got some pretty bad moves. I mean, they're okay. They're just nothing that stands out. Fury Cutter is awful. Vice Grip is solid damage output. Submission deals a quarter of the damage that you did back to you. And then Focus Energy, again, you just kind of have to pray that you get crits. The bug typing is just really bad. It's weak to flying, fire, rock. Yeah, it's just a lot of weaknesses. It's going to be D tier. As good as Scyther? No. I would say C tier. Yeah, C tier sounds about good. Next up is one of the better Pokemon in the game. We've got Tauros. Tauros is a pretty fast Pokemon that has access to Speed Control and Scary Face. Takedown is solid damage output while it can miss, and then Rock Smash, I don't believe lowers defense, so unfortunately it feels like it's being held back by its move pool again. Tauros was also an S tier in Stadium 1, but with this moveset, I just don't see it. Instead of S tier, I think Tauros is a solid A tier. Yeah. Unfortunately, Gyarados is going to be screwed over by its move selection. Next up is Gyarados. It's got Waterfall, Dragon Rage, Twister, and Leer. Leer literally doesn't do anything in this moveset. So if you want to use it, you can set up KOs with like Extreme Speed, Arcanine in the back or something. It doesn't have Intimidate because abilities are not a thing. Dragon Rage, I guess, does a set amount of damage, which could be very niche and could save you. But Twister, off of a really bad special stat, and Waterfall, while it is stab, it's also coming off of a really bad special. Gyarados is also ×4 electric, so that's going to be solid C tier for me. It's not good, it's not bad. Next up, we've got Lapras. Lapras is the water ice type Pokemon with moves like Whirlpool, Mist, Perish Song, and Icy Wind. I believe Icy Wind lowers speed, right? And it's pretty accurate. It's almost close to 100. Perish Song could just win you games. 3 turns are really easy to stall in this game. And Mist will prevent any status or stat reduction on your ally Pokemon. Whirlpool can trap Pokemon, but it just doesn't do any damage. So it's more of a supportive Pokemon and can close out games with Perish Song pretty nicely. And that actually gives it a lot of value. Lapras's typing kind of holds it back a little bit. So I wouldn't say it's an S tier or an A tier. I would say it's a solid B tier. I don't understand what they're doing, man. Next up is Jolteon. Jolteon has really atrocious moves, I'm not going to lie. I'm just going to keep it real. Zap Cannon misses a lot. Jolteon has physical moves for some reason. It doesn't have the best attack. It has fantastic speed and special attack, but the only special attack that it can use misses 50% of the time. So Sand Attack, while disruptive, it's just not a good move. Electric typing in general is just really bad, and I think it just really holds it back, and the moveset doesn't do anything for it, so it's going to be a D tier. Next up is the first evolution. It's going to be Vaporeon. Vaporeon has a reliable water type attack with Waterfall. Doesn't flinch right, quick attack for sniping low health enemies. Sand Attack and Acid Armor to boost your defenses. However, All the super effective damage that Vaporeon takes comes from the special side, right? Grass and electric. So it's not really good. It could create situations where it has... Naturally, Vaporeon has really good special defense, right? And then you could cover up the weakness of low physical defense with acid armor, but the move pool leaves a little bit to be desired. You get walled by certain Pokemon. If you had something like an ice move and some more coverage, maybe it would be a little bit better. Vaporeon's going to go into the C tier. Next up is Flareon. Flareon is a solid fire-type Pokemon. It has access to... I mean, okay, let's talk about this first. It has solid attack, right? You could do some really cool things with like Tail Whip and Quick Attack and surprise some KOs, but Fire Blast, while pretty strong, can miss a lot, and its special isn't the best, so I think there's just better fire types in the game. Flareon's definitely going to be into the... It's better than Rapidash, I will say. Just by like stats alone and being able to be a solid mixed attacker. It's going to be in the C tier with Vaporeon too. Porygon's kind of interesting because it has Blizzard and then Tri-Attack. And then Conversion 2 is a really good defensive option because you can actually change your type to resist the last move that you took, right? Sharpen also increases the attack. Wait, let me look at the stats. Yeah, it's unfortunate that Tri-Attack's a physical attack, right? There's no physical special split yet, so Tri-Attack is going to come out of its physical instead of its special attack, which would have been really, really good for Porygon here. Yeah, unfortunately not the best. I think Porygon goes into the C tier as well. Next up, we've got the first fossil Pokemon, Omastar. Omastar's got really, really bad moves. I'm just going to be real. Water Gun is a really low base power move. Ancient Power can boost all of your stats, but you're really just hoping that RNG is with you. And a lot of the times that's just not the case. Bite can flinch, but I mean, the special is decent. But I mean, Ancient Power is a physical move in this game. And Spike Cannon is just a really, really atrocious move. The typing is also Water Rock, so you're ×4 to grass. You're really weak to like electric. You're weak to ground. You're weak to... It's just too much. Omastar is actually going to be in the D tier as well. The second fossil Pokemon, Kabutops, is next. It's got also Ancient Power, but it's got a better water move in Surf. You also, for some reason, have Endure on this. I'm not sure why. Kabutops is pretty fast, so it's definitely got that going for it. You could maybe pray that you get an Ancient Power boost and then snowball the game that way, but yeah, I mean, it's fast, and thankfully one of its better stats is its attack, taking advantage of that rock typing. Kabutops is definitely better than Omastar. I would say solid B tier, low B tier. Next up is the final fossil Pokemon, Aerodactyl. Aerodactyl also has Ancient Power. It's got pretty decent speed and attack. You can set up Curse and drop your speed for some reason and just ignore Supersonic. It's a bad move. Bite is... I mean, it's coverage, right? I'm trying to be nice about these movesets, but it's just really, really hard. These are really atrocious. Aerodactyl does have going for it that it's a fast and like a physical attacker. So I would say it's up there with Kabutops. Kabutops' water typing makes it a little bit better, so I would say low B tier. I think Kabutops is a little bit higher. I don't know, man. This is just really rough. You can tell, like, from the beginning of the video, I was really excited. I'm just more and more disappointed by these movesets that are so atrocious, man. It's just... I don't know if, like, someone just randomly picked moves or what. Snorlax is such a good Pokemon because it's a special wall, and there's a lot of special attackers early in like Gen 1 and Gen 2, right? But for some reason, I mean, it's got Headbutt, which it can't really flinch because it's just really slow, right? And then you have Curse to boost your attack and defense, but then you also have Defense Curl to boost your defense. Like, you're just wasting a move slot, in my opinion. Whoever made this moveset literally gave Snorlax 3 moves by giving it Defense Curl and Curse. And then you also have a special move in Fire Punch as coverage. I'm just extremely disappointed, man, because Snorlax is such a good Pokemon in general, and it's really, really strong. Snorlax is going to be... The typing and the stats alone kind of carry it a little bit, though. I would say middle B tier. Yeah, it's just... yeah, disappointing. Next up is the first legendary bird, Articuno. Articuno's got Blizzard as its ice coverage. It's got decent special attack, and then you have agility to further boost your speed. Peck is a really bad flying type move. Might as well just, again, have 3 moves. Mist can prevent stat drops, but I don't think everyone uses that, and your typing is ice and flying, so you're just weak to a lot of stuff, and you can't really waste any of your turns setting up Mist. Articuno, also pretty bad. I would say C tier just because it's a legendary with high base stats, but it's bad typing, bad move pool. The second legendary bird Pokemon, Zapdos, has some pretty atrocious moves too. You have Detect, which you can use to scout out a little bit. Thunder, while high damage, and you have pretty high special attack, can miss. You also have Rock Smash, which doesn't lower defense, and then Flash to lower accuracy, which also is highly inaccurate in this game. Zapdos is another Pokemon that would just be S tier, but unfortunately its move pool just screws it over. It's a solid A tier. Next up is the final legendary bird Pokemon, Moltres. Moltres is trying to be Charizard so bad. It's got Sky Attack, but no Power Herb, which means it's 2 turns, and you're just weak to Rock. You just get blown up by Rock Throw. Fire Blast can miss. For some reason, you have Endure and Roar as your last 2 move options. So, again, just really, really bad moves. Moltres is going to be a solid C tier as well. Disappointing. Next up is Dragonite, the Pokemon I hyped up for the whole video, and it's a little disappointing, actually. It's got Leer and Wing Attack as a really cool combination. Twister can flinch 20% of the time, and then Dragon Rage is just a really bad move in like level 100, since everything has really high HP at this point. The special is also not the best for using like Twister, so you really just want to be using it as a flying attacker. Unfortunately, Dragonite is a Pokemon that would be S tier, but it's, again, move pool is just atrocious. There's just no synergy in its moves or anything it wants to do. I actually would go as far as saying it's B tier, middle B tier. Actually, it's actually not good. We're finally into the Johto Pokemon with Meganium. Meganium has Reflect, Strength. Solar Beam is a 2-turn move, and unfortunately, you really don't have the time to set that up. And Poison Powder, you could do some really cool stuff with like Poison Powder and Reflect and then switch out, but I think there's just better grass Pokemon that you would rather be using. Meganium is going to be a solid... it's worse than Exeggutor, I will say. It's a solid C tier. Next up is the second starter from Johto. It's going to be Typhlosion. Typhlosion's got solid damage output in Flame Wheel. It's 100% accurate and a 10% chance of burning. Unfortunately, the other moves are going to be physical moves, which are Rock Smash and Swift, and then Smokescreen to lower accuracy. Atrocious move coverage, unfortunately. If you wanted a mixed attacker, just use Flareon instead as a fire type. So Typhlosion's actually going to be low C tier. Next up is Furret, and somebody really likes Furret at Game Freak, especially during this time, because they gave it some really cool moves. It's got Bolt Beam coverage, right, and Ice Punch and Thunder Punch. So its special attack set is not the best. The fact that it has this coverage is really good, and it has solid stab in Strength. Amnesia can also increase the special defense really, really high. So there's some situations where Furret can actually win you games because it has great move coverage and solid damage output and strength. Furret's actually not bad. I would say it's pretty speedy too, so it can actually be a really good revenge killer. I'm gonna say A tier actually. Next up is the regional bird Noctowl. Noctowl has pretty good move coverage in Takedown and Fly as your stab options. Fly, again, I really don't like this move. But you have solid special attack and confusion as a really good way to hit poison types. Foresight is unfortunately a waste of a move. Noctowl as a solid mixed attacker is going into the B tier. Ledian has some of the worst base stats in the game. While the moves look a little interesting, Supersonic is atrocious, don't use that. You have Giga Drain and then Hyper Beam. Those are solid moves. Unfortunately, its attack stat is really, really low. So even if you hit a Hyper Beam, I don't think you're getting any KOs, and then just Dig is a 2-turn move. It's got the interesting tech that it can dig while also ignore Earthquake because it's a flying type, so It's like flying underground. It's really weird. Ledian's got the tech, so that actually puts it in like B tier. Low B tier, but yeah. Otherwise, I would say it's just like D or G. It's really bad. I am pleasantly surprised. Ariados has... I haven't seen a Pokemon with a good moveset in like 50 Pokemon. I was losing my mind, actually. Ariados has the combination of Toxic and Protect. It can also trap things with Spiderweb. It's 100% accurate and prevents fleeing, right? Also, Sludge Bomb is a solid stab option off of a decent attack stat, actually. It's a solid poison type. It's one of the better poison types in the game, actually. Ariados is actually gonna go into the B tier, high B tier. Next up is the final evolution for Golbat, and unfortunately, it has no poison type attacks. Its flying stab is Fly, which is a 2-turn attack. It's got Supersonic, which means it's got 3 moves, and then final moves is a 20 base power bug move and a special move, which has atrocious special attack. Yeah, this is just atrocious and really, really bad. Crobat, not good. D tier. Next up is Lantern, the water electric Pokemon, and I'm pleasantly surprised that it has decent moves, because while it does have 3 moves because it has Supersonic and that move is just not good, Hydro Pump and Spark are really good coverage, and Hydro Pump can miss, but it's not the worst accuracy. Flail can be very niche if you happen to get into a very low HP situation and you outspeed, and you can pick up KOs with Flail and Surprise. I think Lantern has a really interesting niche as a mixed attacker with water and electric that you don't see on other Pokemon, so I think it's a solid A tier. Next up is the first egg Pokemon that you get in Pokemon Gold and Silver. It's going to be Togetic. Togetic has Double Edge as a really good stab option here. It does give you some recoil damage here, but you also have damage mitigation and charm. It's 2 stages of attack lowered. Metronome can be a little bit of a wild card, right? You can use it if you're in a bad situation and you could get bailed out by luck. Yeah, and Fly, unfortunately, is a really good... I mean, it's a really bad stab move. I just wish it had maybe something like Wing Attack or something else, you know? Double Edge being solid damage output on a normal type is pretty good, so I'd say middle B tier. Next up is Xatu. Xatu also has Fly and Flash, which are really bad moves. You also have Nightshade, which is fixed damage. I don't like those moves in level 100. Maybe in lower levels it's fine, but the damage output just doesn't amount to anything. And then Future Sight is very niche and hard to use properly, with like 2 turns ahead in mind. So there's just definitely better psychic types in the game. Xatu is going to be a C tier. Next up is Ampharos, and boy did they do my boy dirty. Zap Cannon, again, fairly inaccurate. Dynamic Punch, super inaccurate. You have Flash, and then Swift off of a... I guess it's not the worst physical attack, but just... I guess you just gotta flip coins and hope that you land on heads every time you attack with Ampharos. It's way too inconsistent. It's gonna be... C tier. No, it's worse than these. It's gonna be E tier. Azumarill is really interesting because it has Rain Dance and can make it so that your electric Pokemon that have Thunder in the back can actually hit Thunder. So I don't think I've seen Rain Dance on anything else. So it's a very niche Pokemon, and it adds value for the fact that it does that, and that it increases water damage and decreases fire type damage too, right? So it's very niche because it kind of functions as like a Politoed or Kyogre in this game because it has Rain Dance, right? Defense Curl is kind of troll. I guess you can boost your defense in certain matchups, but Waterfall and Icy Wind are really good because Waterfall is solid damage output, stab, and if you get the Rain Dance off, you kind of increase the damage output on that. And then Icy Wind is really good coverage. It's a special move too. Pretty solid water type, actually. I'd say A tier for Azumarill. The fact that it has Rain Dance is so valuable. Next up is the Pokemon that blocks your way in Johto. It's going to be Sudowoodo. Sudowoodo's got Rock Slide, Dig, Mimic, and Strength. Solid damage output with Rock Slide and Strength. Pretty decent defense stat. And then Mimic to really just... it's a skill move that you got to be knowing which moves you're copying, right? So in certain situations, it can be game winning, especially like into dragon types, right? If you copy a dragon move and then you can throw something back at them. Sudowoodo, a solid physical attacker and pretty bulky Pokemon. I'd say B tier. Next up is Politoed, and unfortunately it doesn't have Rain Dance. It'll get Drizzle eventually, right? It's got really weird moves in Whirlpool and Swagger. Icy Wind is solid damage output and speed control. And then Perish Song can just win you games if you can get to their final Pokemon and just pop Perish Song and switch out. That alone gives it a little bit of value. Is it better or as good as maybe Lantern or Azumarill? Probably not, so I'd say solid B tier. Perish Song is incredible though. If you use it properly, it can just be game winning. I love this Jump Bluff set. It's super disruptive, right? You've got Stun Spore and Headbutt, so you can do Paraflinch stuff. You can have pretty solid recovery with Leech Seed. Even though, I mean, the accuracy is not 100, but it's pretty high up there with 90. And then Mega Drain, while not Giga Drain, it's just a solid recovery move. So you can be really annoying by setting up a Leech Seed, Stun Spore, and then just headbutting for the rest of the game and just not letting them move and just recovering in front of them. Jump Bluff is actually pretty decent. I'm pleasantly surprised. That's going to be high B tier, maybe A tier. I think it's A tier. Yeah, I'm going to put it in the A tier. Aipom, unfortunately, is a really low base stat Pokemon, but I want to mention it's got Agility, Double Team, and Baton Pass. So if you get a Double Team off and get lucky to where a move misses, the speed stat is not the worst. But if you get an Agility off and then Baton Pass to a slower Pokemon that's got decent moves and can sweep, you can create a lot of win conditions. So it's a fantastic support Pokemon, actually. I was actually blown away. And then Strength is not a bad damage output. I'm going to say, actually, it's A tier. Next up is Sunflora, and you can do some really cool stuff with like Toxic and Growth Razor Leaf. Razor Leaf does have the chance to critically hit. And then Hyper Beam, while not a really good move, it's a high damage output move. Sunflora is going to go into the B tier. Why is Wooper so cracked? What the heck? It's got Earthquake, Surf, Ice Punch. It's got 3 of the best moves, and then it's got Amnesia to boost its special attack? Nah. If this Pokemon had good base stats, it would actually, like... If this moveset was on Quagsire, it would be so busted, but unfortunately, it's not. So, where is Wooper? I'd say it's actually like C tier just because of its move pool alone. It's really bad base stats, right? And it's water ground, weak to grass, but I'm impressed by its moveset, not gonna lie. Next up is the evolution for Wooper, Quagsire. Quagsire also has solid moves in Surf and Slam. Dig, while it is a 2-turn move, it is a ground move. And then Haze is just a move sync, unfortunately. Quagsire is actually gonna be in the B tier. Next up is the second to last evolution in the game. It's gonna be Espeon. Espeon's got solid damage output in Psybeam, really high special attack stat, and a decent speed stat. You also have Psych Up to copy any stat boosts, and then Swift and Tail Whip, which are not going to be really good, especially off of that attack stat. Its incredible special attack stat is really, really good, and it actually just bolsters it into the high B tier. Next up is Umbreon, and Umbreon unfortunately has some pretty bad moves. Feint Attack is solid damage output, but it doesn't have the highest special attack stat. You can do some really interesting things with like Mean Look and Sand Attack if you want to be really mean. And then Quick Attack is priority, but not that it matters. Umbreon is going to go into the C tier as well with the rest of the evolutions. Following that up is another dark type, Murkrow. Murkrow's got Feint Attack as solid damage output. Nightshade is fixed damage, and Haze is atrocious. And then Fly is also a really bad stab move. There's just better options for flying Pokemon or dark Pokemon if you wanted to use those. So definitely don't recommend using Murkrow. Murkrow's going to be C tier. Unfortunately, Pokemon with good base stats seem to be on the trend of having bad movesets to balance them out. Next up, we've got Slowking. It's got a really good move in Psychic. And then Water Gun, while not the best, is a water move, and water moves are just really, really good. Disable and Growl are unfortunate to have on Slowking. I feel like Slowking could have been easily S tier or A tier, but the moveset is holding it back. Psychic is really good, and it's got solid special defense, so I'd say middle B tier. Next up is the final Ghost-type Pokemon, Misdreavus. Misdreavus has Shadow Ball, though it is coming off of a really bad attack stat. You also have Psywave, which is also like Magnitude, where it has varying intensity, and then Pain Split is really niche because it's, I believe, the only Pokemon that has Pain Split. So you could do some really cool stuff to where you get really low and then heal back up and get opposing Pokemon low. And then finally, Thunder, while not the best accuracy, it is an electric move that is pretty decent coverage and takes advantage off of that decent special attack stat. Misdreavus's ghost typing without having poison is really niche, and I think that alone puts it into the B tier. If its moveset was a little bit better, I think it would actually be A tier, but it's a little unfortunate. Okay, I think Wobbuffet dodged the bad move pool syndrome that these games have by literally only having 4 moves, right? This is what you would run on a Smogon Wobbuffet, which would be like Ubers. So unironically, this is just like the first like broken Pokemon, like Turbo S tier. Yeah, who knew? Wobbuffet. It's just like it's on its own tier. It's way ahead of all of these even. This is just memeing, by the way. Next up is Farigiraf with its Iron Tail ability. No, I'm kidding. Girafarig is interesting mixed attacker. It's got Crunch and Psybeam, and then also Stomped for flinching. You can also set up agilities, and then if you are slower than something, right, after an agility, you can Stomp and flinch them. So that's some really interesting things that you can do. You can also Crunch, lower special defense, and then Psybeam and confuse them. So it's a solid mixed attacker if you need one, and it's got decent moves, and that's kind of a blessing in this game. I'm going to say A tier for Girafarig. Fortress, one of the few steel types in the game, unfortunately doesn't have any steel moves. It doesn't even have explosion, which is what it's known for, right? It is one of the few, actually, yeah, it sets up hazards with spikes. Interesting. It's the only Pokemon, I think, in the whole game, if I had to think. So that alone gives it a really strong niche. I think, yeah, that makes it really, really valuable, being the only Pokemon that can set up spikes. So you also have Strength, Rollout, and Sandstorm. Sandstorm can really just, get rid of opposing weather like sun or rain. So that could be very disruptive as well. And then Strength is, while not the best, it is solid damage output, which is reliable too at 100% accuracy. Fortress is going to go, I think the fact that it has hazards and nothing else has it puts it in the S tier. I think it's just game-changing. Hazards are like game warping in singles, right? And in doubles, it would be a different situation, but yeah. Next up is Dunsparce. Dunsparce has Strength as solid damage output. The attack stat is not the best. You also have Glare to paralyze, and then you also have Attract for disruption, and then Dig. A lot of Pokemon are female in this game, I've just noticed, so I don't think Attract has that much value, especially with like Pokemon with fixed genders like Kangaskhan being in the game. Dig is also just a really bad move, to be honest with you. I think there's better normal types in the game, and that alone is enough to put Dunsparce into the D tier for Dunsparce. Oddly enough. Gligar unfortunately has no ground moves and no flying moves. It's got Slash, and for some reason it has Feint Attack off of a really bad special attack stat. Guillotine is a one-hit KO move, but it's just such a meme-worthy move. Yeah, I don't know. They really screwed it over with Sand Attack and Guillotine. You have 2 attacks. You have 1 attack because Feint Attack is just atrocious. Why would you ever use it? Your only move is Slash. Like, you literally have no stab. It's just unfortunate. Gligar had so much potential. I'm disappointed. Gligar is going to go into the D tier. Next up is Steelix, and oh man, we're cooking here. It's got Iron Tail, really, really good. I think Iron Tail is the highest base damage steel type move, which hits 3 times out of 4, which is not bad. 75% accuracy, right? Unfortunately, you got Mud Slap, but you also have Rock Throw, which has no added effects, but it is solid damage output at 90% accuracy. And then you have Sandstorm. So I think Steelix typing is pretty decent, and having like the highest like steel type move in the game is good enough to put it into the B tier. Next up is Granbull. I wish they gave Granbull Shadow Ball, because that would make it so threatening. It's got 300 attack, right? And Shadow Ball would be a physical attack, so that would be really, really good for KOing opposing ghost types and psychic types that are really, really frail. You do have Stab, Headbutt, and then you can do some really cool stuff with like Scary Face to outspeed them and then flinch them with Headbutt. And then you also have Bite, which can also flinch, which is really interesting. So I think the main strategy is get a Scary Face off and then start using your moves. You don't really want to use Dynamic Punch since it's 50% accuracy. It's just really gonna miss most of the time. Granbull is really slow. If it had its ability Intimidate, it would just make it so much more valuable, but I think that just the moveset is really bad, and if it had Shadow Ball or something like better coverage, it would be so good, but I'll put it in the C tier. Next up is Qwilfish, water poison type, kind of like Tentacruel. It's got Sludge Bomb and Hydro Pump. Really, really good damage output with Sludge Bomb off of decent attack stat. And then Hydro Pump, while its special is not the best, it is a water move, and water moves just have really good coverage. They just hit a lot of stuff for neutral, and just anything that wants to switch into a Sludge Bomb does not appreciate taking a Hydro Pump, right? You also have Minimize if you want to like be really annoying and abuse evasion. And then you have Pin Missile, which is a really bad move. Don't use that. Qwilfish is a solid poison Pokemon up there with Ariados. It's not as good, though. I'd say middle of the pack, so middling B tier. Next up is Heracross, and we just stumbled across the best Bug-type Pokemon. Heracross has access to Mega Horn, which is the best bug move in the game. You also have Rock Smash, which I don't believe lowers defense. Correct me if I'm wrong, though. And you have Leer and Thief to steal items. So with items being a thing, Thief is kind of valuable, but Megahorn Stab off of 298 attack is nothing to scoff at. Heracross is the best bug type by far, higher than Beedrill. It actually knocks Beedrill into the middle of A tier. Scizor is a really interesting sweeper. It's got an amazing attack stat. It's got Metal Claw, which can boost its physical attack. And then you have agility to boost your speed, right? So you can really just set up an agility and then just keep hitting those Metal Claws and boost your attack and just really sweep. If you see the angle where Leer plus Metal Claw KOs, you can actually kind of go for that too. It's a Pokemon that I think can really snowball, so Scizor is actually like high A tier, maybe even S tier. I would say high A tier. If it had better Bug Stab, it'd be really, really good. Next up is Shuckle. Shuckle is an unbreakable wall, right? Look at those defenses. It's so disgusting. You can go for Sludge Bomb and pray that you get a poison off, and then Sandstorm damage over time is really, really good. Bide is likely to get you a KO if they just attack into you mindlessly, and then Rollout just scaling damage over time. Unfortunately, your attack stat is not the best, but it is a way to damage after you get a Sludge Bomb off and maybe a poison. I think Shuckle's like defenses being so absurd makes it just an instant A tier. Next up is Sneasel, the Dark Ice type Pokemon. It's got Ice Punch and Beat Up, but unfortunately, it comes out of its abysmal special attack stat. It has a combination of Screech and Slash, which can set up KOs, especially if you manage to get a crit. It's just going to one-shot something, so that alone has a little bit of value. And it's pretty fast too. I think that alone is enough to put Sneasel into the high B tier. Next up is Ursaring, and it's got the combination of Rest and Snore. Unfortunately, that is really bad. And then its other damaging options are Dig and Fire Punch. I'm not even gonna like sugarcoat it. Fire Punch on base 200 special attack is just really, really bad. Or not base 200, but 200 special attack is just really bad. And then Dig is an atrocious move to use. It's just a charging move that only does 60 damage is just really, really bad. Ursaring is going to be C tier for me. Next up is the Fire Slug Magcargo, Fire and Rock type. It's an interesting combination, right? It could be really offensive, but unfortunately it's really slow. It also wants to be a mixed attacker, but it fails to do it effectively. It's got an atrocious attack stat, so Rock Slides don't actually do anything. You can't flinch anything because Rock Slide, I mean, your base stat for speed is really, really low, right? You could get the 50% chance of poisoning with Smog and then Amnesia. And depending on the matchup, you can just set up Amnesias and Poison Stall. But yeah, Fire Blast can miss. Rock Slide doesn't flinch because you're slow. It's just unfortunate. Maybe if there was like Trick Room and you could do something like that, you know? Magcargo is going to be a solid C tier. Next up is Piloswine, and I'm pleasantly surprised. It has Earthquake, and that immediately gives it a lot of value. I think the combination of Ground and Ice just breaks through a lot of stuff, especially in these early generations where the type combinations aren't too wild. And then you also have Mist and Fury Attack, which are not good moves, but Mist could just be really good in protecting stat drops on your side of the field. While it does have atrocious special attack stat, being able to speed control with Icy Wind and having solid damage output in Earthquake puts Piloswine into the high B tier. Corsola is a highly defensive Pokemon that is 4 times weak to grass, right? So in certain matchups, it can actually just win you the game. Unfortunately, it also has Attract and is a female Pokemon. Surf and Ancient Power, it's sort of a mixed attacker. Surf is reliable damage output off of 199 special attack, and then Ancient Power can boost all of your stats, right? You can also do some really cool stuff with Mirror Coat, especially if you know your calcs for Corsola. Corsola's typing kind of holds it back a little bit. I think it's high C tier, maybe low B tier. I'll say low B tier just because it has the niche of Ancient Power and Surf. Next up is Octillery. Octillery has the added benefit of having Lock-On, which ensures that its next move will hit. Octazooka has shaky accuracy, but it has a 50-50 chance of reducing accuracy, right? So you can also focus energy and pray that you get a lucky crit, and that's pretty cool. But Lock-On is mostly to be used with Octazooka, but I think you just want to focus energy and go to town with Octazooka and pray that you get lucky, because this is a very luck-driven Pokemon, right? You want to get lucky with the accuracy drops and the crits. Special attack stat is also not bad. It's a pretty niche Pokemon. If you happen to get a crit with focus energy and Octazooka or like a stat drop, it can snowball out of control pretty easily. I'd say it's middle B tier. Next up is Iron Bundle. No, I'm kidding. It's Delibird. Delibird has Blizzard and Fly as its damaging options. Present is risky because you can randomly heal the enemy. And then you also have Double Team, which is kind of like that other move, but it doesn't miss because it's on yourself. So Blizzard can miss. It's 70% accuracy, and then Fly is a 2-turn move, which I hate. Overall, Ice Flying is pretty bad, and it doesn't have the base stats that Articuno does, so it's going to be D tier for me. Next up is Mantine, a water flying like Gyarados, but it's got decent special attack, so it's the special version of Gyarados. Unfortunately, I mean, it's got better moves. It's got Wing Attack, right? It's got Waterfall as a solid water option, so it's literally a better Gyarados. Ignore Supersonic, and Takedown is solid for certain matchups where you don't want to use Wing Attack or Waterfall. Mantine is going to go into... where's Gyarados? It's above Gyarados. I think it's low B tier. Next up is Skarmory. Skarmory is such a strong Pokemon. It's got Steel Wing, which can raise its defense and then agility to outpace any Pokemon that it's slower than. And then, unfortunately, it's Stab move and Fly. And then Fury Attack is just awful. Don't use that. But the fact that you can use... It's a solid Steel-type Pokemon. It's all it is. Skarmory doesn't have the really cool moves that you want to use, like Roost and all the other OP stuff that it gets in Smogon. So I think the typing alone makes it, like, B tier. Yeah, high B tier. Next up is Houndoom, and I was really excited about this Pokemon because it's one of the highest special attackers in the game, and being Dark and Fire really takes advantage of its high special attack stat, but unfortunately it has Ember and Bite, so they knew. They absolutely knew. And then it has Roar and Swift as moves, coverage, or whatever. It's just not good. Unfortunate. It could have been S tier, but I think it's just middle B tier. It could have been A tier actually if it had decent moves. Next up is Kingdra, water dragon type, and the second fully evolved dragon Pokemon in the game. Thankfully it has Waterfall and not Water Gun. Twister is solid damage output off of its decent special attack stat. It's got the same special and physical attack stats, so Frustration's actually not bad. And then you also have Leer to boost the damage output of Frustration, or you can clean up KOs with Extreme Speed in the back like Arcanine. One thing that Kingdra has going for it is it's really good typing. It's only weak to Dragon, and there's not a lot of really good Dragon moves in the game, so I think Kingdra's easily A tier. Next up is Donphan, and Donphan is a powerhouse because it's a fully evolved Pokemon with decent stats, and it also has Earthquake, so it means that it doesn't care about its other 3 moves in my opinion. Just the fact that it's a fully evolved Pokemon with Earthquake is just so valuable. It's also got incredible physical defense, so yeah, Donphan, A tier. Next up is Porygon 2. Porygon 2 is one of my favorite Pokemon, and unfortunately, it doesn't even have Thunderbolt or Ice Beam. Instead, they gave it Zap Cannon and Thief, and then you also have Conversion, which is not Conversion 2. Special move that switches the user's elemental type into one of the user's attack types. So it's not the one that you resist, but to the attack type. So it's situational, right? It could be good into fire or like grass types or whatever. Same type resisted attacks. And then Swift is your solid damage output. Your attack stat is not the best, and then you can kind of do some things with Thief, but the fact that it's not Stab, the damage isn't going to be crazy. Porygon 2 does have its good stat, or like base stats going for it, so it's easily like high B tier. Next up is Stantler, and Stantler unfortunately has an awful move pool. Again, Hypnosis Dream Eater is not a good combination. I wish they would stop doing this. And then you have Stomp as your normal type damage, and then Mud Slap as coverage. Mediocre Pokemon with mediocre move pool. It's just not good. Unfortunately, C tier. They could have gave Smeargle any moveset that they wanted, and they opted for this. So it's not a Pokemon that you want to use offensively. This would have been a crazy support Pokemon, right? It's actually game breaking what you can do with Smeargle, and they just opted for 4 attack moves, or 3 attack moves and Confuse Ray. Mach Punch is interesting because it's priority, but other than that, it's just not. I guess Flamethrower is really good because there's some pretty strong steel types in the game, like Fortress or Skarmory, or even Scizor, right? Scizor and Fortress are all ×4 to fire, so I think there's some value in that. And those Pokemon being so good gives value to Smeargle and Flamethrower. Is it going to be A tier? I don't think so. So I'm going to put it in the C tier. Next up is the top Pokemon, Hitmontop. You can do some really cool stuff with Focus Energy and Triple Kick. Since you're hitting so many times with Triple Kick, you have almost guaranteed crits. And then you also have Counter. Unfortunately, there's no Intimidate, right? So if you know your Hitmontop calcs, then you can really take advantage of Counter. And Strength is solid damage output, doesn't miss, and it's 80 base power, not bad. Is it one of the better fighting types? Probably not. I would say it's high C tier. It's so funny seeing Wooper above Vaporeon. That's not the case. It's like down here. It's the Miltank that traumatized us as children. Whitney's Miltank, right? It's got some interesting moves. Stomp is solid damage output, and it's pretty fast. Heal Bell will just remove all status problems, right? And then you also have Ice Punch as good move coverage. I'm starting to think that ice coverage is not really that good, since Dragonite is not really that threatening in this game. Maybe just Stab, Stomp, and Bide. You can do some really cool stuff, since Miltank has pretty decent HP stat and solid defenses. You can probably get away with using Bide to KO something, and then saving Miltank in the back to revenge KO with Stomp and its decent speed. Ironically, I think Miltank is one of the better normal types in the game. Even better than Kangaskhan. I'm gonna put it in the B tier, above Kang. There we go. We are near the end. We are here at the special tank Blissey. Also one of the game-breaking walls, right? You have Shuckle, you have Blissey, and Chansey as well. Blissey's moves are leaving a little bit to be desired. It doesn't have the niche of having its special combined, so it's not like a crazy special attacker anymore. And then Egg Bomb and Flash and Defense Curl are just all really bizarre moves. Egg Bomb's solid, but you don't want to be using your physical attack as Blissey, right? You want Seismic Toss or like Toxic and just stall things. That's kind of what you want to do with Blissey. And then Thunder, I mean, yeah, solid move coverage, but I mean, the special attack stat is not the best, but it's not the worst either. I think Blissey is going to go into the C tier, high C tier. I think its move stat, I mean, its stat pool is pretty decent, actually, enough to put it into the B tier. Enter the legendary beast, Raging Bolt, aka Raikou. We've got Raikou here with Spark, Quick Attack, Flash, and Roar. Spark, while not the best, it is solid damage output and can paralyze 1 in 3 chance. You also have Quick Attack to finish KOs, to finish Pokemon that are low. And then its attack stat is not the best, but it's also not the worst. Roar and Flash are just really atrocious. Do not even try using those moves. Raikou. Is it better than Zapdos or Electabuzz? Probably not. It's got legendary base stat total, though. I think it's high B tier. Next up is Entei. Entei's got middling special attack stat. It's more of a physical attacker, right? And its physical attack is Rock Smash. It's really unfortunate. They really screwed this Pokemon over. Fire Blast, while a high damaging move, it can miss, and Entei doesn't have the highest special attack. Entei is going to go into the C tier. It's actually like a worse Flareon, unironically. Next up is Suicune, and they thought it would be funny to give it Gust. It also has Bubble Beam. It can lower speed, which is really interesting. And then Roar and Mist are just, again, bad moves. No reason to use them. Yeah, there's better water types in the game. Unfortunately, Suicune is not one of them. It's literally worse than Vaporeon. I'll put it middle C tier. We made it to the end. One of my favorite Pokemon, Tyranitar, and unfortunately, it got screwed over by bad moves. It's got Bite and Mud Slap, which are some of the lowest base damage moves in the game. Sandstorm for some reason, because it doesn't have Sandstream, right? So it has to set up its own sand manually. And then Leer to hit them with the 20 base power Mud Slap. That's just so disgustingly bad. I hate it here. This game is so bad, guys. Oh my god. Tyranitar, yeah. Times 4 to fighting. Rock types are weak to a lot of stuff. It doesn't have the sand boost to boost its special defense. It's a D tier, unfortunately. It's just really bad. So there you have it. That's the tier list for all the Pokemon. If I had to pick a team, I think this is probably what I would land on. I think setting up spikes is really valuable. Having stuff that is immune to spikes in Charizard and Donphan is really good. Scizor, while times 4 weak to fire, you have some good switch-ins with Kingdra that times 4 resist fire. And then Wobbuffet is just incredibly broken, right? And Scizor can really run away with games, I think, with agility and Metal Claw. So, yeah, this is what I would probably pull up to. I might actually stream this, so make sure to check me out on Twitch. Link is in the description below. And the full tier list image is also in the description below if you want to check it out. If you want to fight me in the comments about my decisions and maybe argue with me, you can definitely do that. Just be nice and civil. But yeah, that's going to be the tier list. Thanks so much for watching all the way to the end, and let me know in the comments what kind of videos you want to see in the future. See you guys on the next one. Peace.